Today's conveyancing clients expect speed, clarity, and frequent updates. But tight margins and rising client expectations put pressure on conveyancing practices. With smart automation and clear workflows, Leap helps conveyancing teams spend less time on admin and more time supporting their clients. Learn more at leap.co.uk.
You're listening to the Today's Conveyancer podcast, the leading source of information for residential property lawyers in England and Wales. Don't forget to subscribe and sign up to our free newsletter at todaysconveyancer.co.uk. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter.
Hello, welcome along to the latest Today's Conveyancer podcast. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Mark Slade. Mark is probably familiar to many listeners. He's CTO of Fidler and Pepper, an active member of a number of industry bodies. And the topic of conversation today is something that I've been quite keen to explore over the past couple of years, but never quite got round to it. This is employee ownership trusts, because you've recently announced, Mark, that Fidler and Pepper has become an employee ownership trust, which is obviously really interesting and exciting for you guys. I'm kind of intrigued to hear about that journey, how it started, and why in particular you sort of felt that route was the right thing for you rather than sale or private equity, something along those lines. So thanks so much for joining the podcast. Hopefully a number of our listeners will know who you are, but I guess many won't. So in the first instance, tell us a little bit about yourself, please, Mark, and your background.
No problem. I'm a solicitor. I was CEO of Fidler and Pepper for 20 years. Currently, I'm CTO. Fidler and Pepper, we've always used IT quite extensively, and that's been my sort of baby as well. So we've been at the forefront of a lot of technological advances. We were the first firm to do online conveyancing quotes in the 90s, first to do wills online in the 90s, first to do SMS text updates to your phone in the year 2000 that was. So that's been something that's been really important to us. And then alongside that, we've always tried to be a nice place to work. We've called it trying to make it a magical place to work. And that's been at the core of our values for the last sort of 30 years, really. And that neatly feeds into the whole EoT thing, really.
Well, you're not Mr. Fidler or Mr. Pepper.
I've got to say, I am a solicitor.
You said that at the start.
But actually, I spend most of my time now coding. I learned about coding self-taught in the early 90s, and now that's most of what I do, and that's what I really enjoy doing.
So if that's an introduction for the uninitiated into yourself, Mark, let's move on to what is an employee ownership trust. I think a lot of people will have heard of the term. They might well have heard the acronym EoT as well. But perhaps for those of us that aren't particularly familiar with the concept, what is an EoT?
An employee-owned trust. It's often known as the John Lewis model because they've been operating under something similar to this for, I think, getting on for a century now. I'm not sure of the exact details, but there are a load of other businesses operating in this way. And what happens is that the shares of the company are transferred to a trust, and the trust then holds the shares on trust for the benefit of the staff. Now, generally speaking, the trust doesn't take a role in managing the company or running the company, but they take more of an executive role. So if there's major things like buying a new office or bringing in a new CEO, they will be consulted and they can put a stop to that or need to know why that's happening, because they need to know that what's happening is in the best interest of all the staff. But they do not run the business, and they don't take any part in the day-to-day running of it. Yeah, I think that's the main thing. And what's been found is that EoT companies generally are outperforming their competitors by sort of 10 to 15% in terms of improved profitability. It should be, and we're hoping it will be, an added attraction for recruiting talent and for keeping people, because people feel that they are part of the future of the business and the business is being run with them in mind.
And who's on the trust? I mean, is it members of the senior leadership team, and then are there some external advisors?
Now you've got options there. You can have external people on there, but there's no reason why you need to. We actually deliberately chose 3 members of staff that aren't on any management teams at all, and these are people that we felt the staff could work with. They've got a good relationship with all of the staff, and we felt that they were people that we could work with. The outgoing owners can also be part of the trust company, but have to be in a minority. So it's a limited company, Fidler and Pepper EoT Limited, that owns the shares of Fidler and Pepper. And these, we've called them trustees, but they're not trustees. They're directors of that trust company. So it's 3 women that we work with and have done for many, many years. And me and Matt are the directors of that trustee company.
Okay. So I guess, the $1,000,000 question here is, why was this the right route to explore for you guys rather than a sale, in private equity investment, an alternative way in which you might, for want of a better phrase, dispose of the business?
So we've been building this business for many, many years and made it quite successful, and very happy with how it's gone. But we were looking for sort of not necessarily an exit strategy, but a way to get value from that, because you've built something that's worth a considerable amount of money, and it'd be nice to actually have some of that to retire on. In traditional partnership law firms, quite often the retiring partners, their aim is just to leave it in a bit of a better state than what they found it in, and that's that. But we feel what we've got here is something quite different to that. It is a systems-led business. It runs on high volume contracts. It's all about quality of service. And whilst we do volume work, we've got a 4.8 out of 5 rating on Trustpilot, which we're very proud of. And we don't want to lose that. That's important to us. So we're looking at options, and we were approached by 2 or 3 businesses who were interested in buying us out. And we had a number of talks with various ones. And it seemed all right. They're all talking about this due diligence process that you go through, which can be quite painful. But we also knew that as part of that, there are usually redundancies that go around a buyout, because quite often they'll get rid of the admin teams and centralise that with their own admin. And then quite often it forms a pattern that the existing owners are locked in for a certain period of time, be it a year, 18 months, 2 years, and that's called the earn-out. So you have to stay there and help with that. But then quite often at the end of the earn-out, you're generally sort of kicked into touch. So that's a sort of setup. That's not my idea. That's what I've seen happening in practice with a lot of attempt. I didn't like a lot of that. I didn't like the fact that people that we've worked with for 20, 30 years would just be made redundant. I didn't like the fact that the business was likely to lose its identity, become part of a bigger organisation. And for my involvement, I can only speak for myself. Well, firstly, I wouldn't want to report to another boss. I've been the boss for so long, that might be difficult for me, but I could swallow my pride. But the other thing is how they're going to run it. I don't know how they'd run it. And them being kicked into touch after a couple of years, well, that doesn't, I don't fancy that. I don't know. It didn't ring true.
There's only so much golf you can play.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking on, that's on the dark side. If you look on the bright side, you might get on with these people, you might work really well with them, everything might be golden, and you might go well in their new bigger company, and that's fine. And I know people that's happened to as well. So I was just looking at one side of it, but there are other sides that, it could have gone very well. But from my perspective, I'm 63 now. So, whilst I think of myself as incredibly young, others might not view me in the same way. So I think there's probably a greater likelihood I'd be kicked into touch. And that's not something I'm ready to do just yet. So anyway, we'd had these chats with various people, and we went to meet a couple on the way down to an awards ceremony in London. And we came away from that meeting, and both Matt and I were making excuses about how they weren't really that bad after all. But being frank, the one seemed very cutthroat, and the other one didn't. I wasn't impressed that he knew what he was talking about. I can say this because you don't know who they are, and we've been approached by a number of people, so they don't know who they are either.
You've never been one to mince your words anyway, Mark. So
Well, no, but I mean, we were making excuses. But if that was the only way out, then that was how it would have to be, whether it was them or with somebody else. Then we went to this award ceremony in London, and I think it's Talbot's in the West Midlands. They won an award, and they'd been publishing the fact that they are an EoT. So what's that all about? So I read up on their website while we were at the award ceremony, because they won an award, they'd done well, and they were making a big deal of it. So then I started looking into it a bit more, and then a bit more, and then the next day on the train back, I was just reading up all about it. I ordered a book on it, and I read more and more about it, and I just thought, this just matches us down to the ground. It really just suits who we are. We've got so many people in the business have been with us for 10, 20, 30, and even 40 years. And a lot of them are like family. And some of those are in the admin departments that would go in a normal sellout. So there's that side of it. But also, from my perspective, there's flexibility there. So I can stay working with the business as long as it suits the business and as long as it suits me. If I want to and they don't, then I'm out. That's the end of it. And if they want me but I've had enough, they're out. But it's a proper two-way dialogue. I went down to 4 days a week a couple of years ago. That's fine. I don't want to go down any more than that, but I might do in about another 3 years' time. And the EoT gives you a bit more flexibility on that. So I'd looked into it all and I thought, yeah, this is what we want to do. So I told Matt about it, and he looked into it as well. And Matt talked it through with our dad. Matt's my brother. And Matt wasn't sure about it initially. And so my dad said, well, you need to look into it, Google it, look for bad stories and look for things where it's gone wrong. And we've both done that. We've looked for examples of where an EoT has gone badly wrong. And the only one we can find is for someone that sold out to his staff and he thought everyone loved him and secretly they couldn't stand him. And as soon as the EoT completed, they kicked him out. So that's the only one where it's sort of blown up in their face. And, that's not necessarily bad for the company and not, he should still get paid out. And that's probably the best thing for the company in the long run. So it just seemed the right idea. We took it to the other directors. They were delighted because we shared with them the possibility that we might sell out. And obviously they were very nervous about that. And, it's a scary prospect and you might do well under the new rules, but you might not. So they were over the moon about it. And it felt right, felt like we're leaving a legacy. And for me personally, I took over as CEO about 23 years ago, something like that. And I remember just at that time I was doing it, I was on a mountain biking weekend and I was on a long climb and I got to thinking about what I wanted out of the business. And the key thing for me was I wanted to create something that was bigger than the partners, because then it was all about a partnership. I wanted to create something that was more than that had its own momentum. Because if it's all on partners, then it lives or dies on the partners' personalities and abilities. So you can get a real dick in charge and the whole thing goes pear-shaped. Whereas I'd like to create something, I wanted to create something that was more than that. And then when the EoT thing sort of came up, I thought, well, this is that. This is the answer to that. This is creating a legacy that's much bigger than us and stronger than us and is great. So the sweetener of all of this as well, of course, is the tax advantages. And at the time I was looking into it, any payment you receive under the EoT was completely tax-free, which was amazing. So that's nice. Unfortunately, Rachel Reeves had other ideas about that.
I was about to say, so there is a way in which you can realise some value for yourselves through this process.
Yeah. So essentially, you're selling your shares in the company. So you'll be selling them for a price. So you get an independent valuation on that, and that's based on your performance over the last few years. And then you agree on that, and you agree a multiplier. and then you sort of work out a period over which you'll be paid. And our period is anywhere from probably 6 to 10 years. And on the face of it, that is longer than if you went to a trade sale. But having said that, I know one trade sale that completed in 2019, and I know that they had half the payment straight away, but I know there's another half that they still haven't had, because a lot of these private equity deals will depend on them being able to sell on themselves. And I think, in that particular one, then the second half of the payment will come when they sell on, which is perfectly fine, and that's fair. So, but the myth of a trade buyer coming in, handing you a check and you waltzing off into the sunset, it is a myth. That doesn't happen. That's why they lock you in, and that's why they want you incentivized, so that you need to benefit from them selling on themselves. So,
but the longer the period here, the higher the risk, presumably. I mean, you talk about 6 to 10 years.
yeah.
You've built a very solid and very good business, but that doesn't mean to say that your EOT is going to continue to operate it in a solid and successful way, does it?
Yeah, that's a risk. We're involved in. I mean, from the EoT completed on the 8th of April, and we're involved. We're not changed. The management has not changed. It's the same directors running it. There's been no change whatsoever. We've got about 170 staff, and in amongst those are people that we are looking to bring on. And we've been looking to bring them on for quite a while, and they've come in, got more involved with directors' meetings and so on. But now they can see an end game here as well. So I think that it's turbocharging some people's involvement with the business and making them realise that there's a massive potential going forward. We had a big presentation meeting to all the staff towards the end of March. We told them all about it, and that was brilliant. It went down really well. Everyone was very happy. And what we hadn't realised before we started this process is how many people were already aware of us selling out as a possibility. We didn't think people were thinking about this, but they weren't just thinking about it. They were openly discussing it. Especially when I went down to 4 days, they were saying, well, he's not long for this world. Something's going to happen soon. So they were talking about it. And then also a surprising number of people have worked for other companies that have sold out, and they've gone along that script that I just mentioned, all the admin function being made redundant, losing your identity, and then a them and us strategy. I know one lady spoke to me about that. She said on the firm that she was in that was taken over, it was very much them and us, and they did not like each other, and it just went downhill from there. So there was a few people said, if you had sold out, we were going to leave straight away. So we hadn't realised any of this was going on. But it was great sort of comfort to the people there. We had a lot of really nice comments on the back of it. So, it's really, really exciting. It feels like the right thing to do. There is the risk of it not panning out and us not getting paid off, but we're going to get paid off gradually. So the longer it goes on, the less of an issue that is to us. And if we hadn't taken any steps, the risk of it all going pear-shaped will be there anyway. If we weren't selling out or doing an EoT and it all went down the toilet in 5 years' time, well, if we hadn't done this, we'd still have lost everything. So, yeah.
You mentioned that there are obviously tax benefits to the process, and they've changed, haven't they? So it was, very favourable. It's now 50%, isn't it? From what I understand.
No, it's 12%. You tax at 12%.
50% on capital gains.
It's 50% capital gains tax rate, which is 24%. So, that's it. When it happened, I was splitting feathers, but I couldn't find anyone that was remotely sympathetic.
And then what about sort of the practical impact on the staff? I mean, my understanding is that it gives us an opportunity to reward the staff, to bring them into the ownership of the business, feel as though they've got a bit more of a financial interest in it. How have you kind of managed that process?
Yeah, we're in the process of that. We've got the ability there. So we can offer share options and shares to people, and that's something that we're looking at and considering. We can't say any more than that at the moment, but that's something that can happen in the future or soon or whatever. But it gives you other options there for how you want to sort of balance the load really, and let more people benefit from your success in the future. There's also the ability with an EOT company to pay tax-free bonuses of up to £3,600 a year to each member of staff. We're looking into that as well. At the moment, we've got a very complex bonus scheme that we put in place that works with our profits, works with people's roles. It's taken a lot of effort to get in there, and we're pleased with the scheme, and we're still tweaking that. We haven't got enough floating around to pay that and the tax-free bonus as well. And there are rules about paying the tax-free bonus. It needs to be paid in a fair way to effectively all people. You can exclude certain people, like ones who've not been here for a year. You can scale it on how long you've been here, you get a bit more. But other than that, you can't link it into profits, fees generated, and those sorts of things. So we're looking at that, and as time goes on, we hope to be able to bring that in and run that in alongside the existing bonus scheme.
We are sort of moving towards the end of the time we have for the discussion, but I guess, and you've been incredibly candid, Mark, it's been really interesting, and hopefully listeners have sort of taken away a huge amount from this. I guess just to sort of finish off, tell us about the legal experience that you've gone through, because of course this has put you on the other side of the coin that you kind of play, in your daily role. You've obviously engaged another firm to support you with this. What's that process been like?
That's actually been really good. We've sort of watched various webinars on it and so on. We watched one by a company called Doyle Clayton, and they're who we chose to advise us. They've been very good. There's been a variety of advisors within the business. We had a range of quotes earlier, a massive range, and these were about in the middle, so that helped as well. It's a good process actually, because my understanding with a trade sale is that it will get very adversarial in the due diligence stage, and they will be trying to knock you down and so on. And obviously that's not happening here. So we only started the process off, I think last August, I think it was, we first started, and it completed on the 8th of April, as I said. You need to get the consent of your regulator. So I think the SRA have done a few of these. They can take several months to agree on it. We're CLC regulated. We're the first CLC firm to do this. The CLC were great about it. They knew what they wanted to find out, but we're happy to have discussions on what we can and can't do, and it was good. It was a good process with them. And then, so the early stage is that you get a valuation done, and then you take it on from there. But it wasn't a painful process, but there's quite a bit of legal stuff involved, because the structure is not a simple structure, really.
This is probably a very naive question, and I ask it with my tongue in my cheek, but this is in effect Turkey's voting for Christmas, isn't it? You can make up your own valuation of the business.
No,
because
valuation. Yeah, you'd think so, wouldn't you? We sold for 100 million. Yeah, paid out for 600 years. No, it has to be an independent valuation, and there's a company they use for that. And we've produced our accounts to them. We've produced a summary of the business. We've explained who we are, what we're good at, what we do, what the opportunities are going forward. And some of that they've taken on board, and some of that they say, well, we can't take that into account. That's not entirely relevant. And then on the basis of that, the valuation was reached.
To finish off with then, Mark, and I've not met anybody who isn't keen to share the virtues of EoTs. This is a route that, as you say, a number of firms have gone down. I think it's much more prevalent in other business areas, isn't it? But it's obviously reasonably new to law. You're obviously an advocate for it, but what advice might you give firms who are thinking about this at the moment? So some of the key kind of triggers that you went through that took you down this route rather than an alternative.
I'd say it sends a great message to your staff, but it doesn't take away the issues around succession. You've still got to have succession planning there. Now, succession planning is to be coming from within, and we're on that road, and that's great. But it's a vote for your staff. It's a vote for your local community, because you're investing in the local community. You're showing your commitment to it. If you're already looking at a trade sale or thinking along those lines, then I think definitely give it a look, give it some consideration, because there's lots of advantages to this. So you've got the flexibility of your involvement, you've got the tax breaks, and you've got the message it sends to your staff. You've got also the improved performance in the company when everyone's pulling the same way. Hopefully people are policing each other instead of turning a blind eye when someone's trying to get away with something. So there's lots of stuff there. So if you're looking at a trade sale, I'd say this is genuinely an excellent alternative. For us, I mean, it was a no-brainer. This is like 10 times more valuable to us personally than over a trade sale. It just means so much more to us, fits who we are, fits how we work our firm. If you're not looking at a trade sale at all and you're just thinking of retiring, then I'd say it's something that you could still consider. But, like I say, it doesn't take away the succession issues. So if you are a 4-partner firm and you're all over the age of 55 and there's no one coming through, EoT is not going to help you. You've still got to have people coming through who are going to take this business off you, and it's got to seem like it's worth taking on for you.
I think, as you say, if you're not preparing for the future, then regardless of whether it's EoT, sale, PE, it's kind of irrelevant, isn't it? You have to be thinking about what the future of the business looks like. But it's been
dinner years ago. There was a guy there, seemed a nice guy. He was about 55. I think I was about 45 at the time. And as the meeting went on, we got onto succession and so on. And then it became clear he'd got 5 partners and they were all over the age of 55 and they got no one coming through. And as the evening went on, he became more and more aggressive. And I think he was just, it was just dawning on him what a shit state he was in. And you can't have that. You've got to be bringing people through, whatever that looks like.
100%. And that's true of legal businesses, true of any businesses. I often share the story of my dad, GP, professional services, became a senior partner by virtue of the fact that he'd been there the longest. That's not succession planning, is it? That's just how good is your pulse?
That's it. But I think, if you're looking at a trade sale, then I think this is genuinely a good alternative.
Thank you so much for sharing your insight. And as I say, it's a topic that I've been really keen to explore through the podcast for a little while. So really appreciate you joining, Mark. The Today's Conveyancer podcast is available on your preferred podcast provider. It's also available on todaysconveyancer.co.uk. My thanks to Mark. Thank you as ever for listening, and we'll see you again soon.